Hey, everybody. This is the first part of my conversation with the great Bill Whittle. Bill was my major influence when I started doing videos, and it was a thrill for me to sit down with him. We talked a little bit about his career, about thinking and writing effectively, and quite a lot about why the left is always wrong and whether it's a character issue. We talked about conservatism, the nature of human beings, and why Bill is actually optimistic about the future of the country. I watch Bill's shows with Scott Ott and Stephen Green almost every day. There's no better political channel on YouTube, in my opinion. I'll link it below. If you like this first half hour, you're going to love parts 2 and 3. All right, here we go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
I do. I hear you now. How are you?
I feel like we're in the Stratosphere Lounge.
Yeah. Pretty disappointing, isn't it?
It's a big moment for me. You're in the Hobo Dojo. So
I love it.
You are, no matter where you are, you're talking somewhat downward.
Oh, well, I love the Hobo Dojo. That's a really cool space, actually.
It's what I can afford and still save for a house in Nashville.
How is Nashville? How long have you been there?
I'm not in Nashville. I'm here.
Oh.
I'm here, but I think, like many of us, I'm considering an escape.
Yeah,
you're in California still, aren't you?
Yeah, I sure am. And a lot of people are saying, "Man, you need to get out of there." And I'm trying to think. I think one of two things will send me out. One is if they start like poking around asking for the guns that I used to own before they were lost in a tragic boating accident.
I was so sorry to hear when that
happened.
Yeah,
it's
Bill.
Terrible. Or if they start telling me for any reason whatsoever, I can't go,
Yeah, then you're going.
I'm out of here.
Yeah, who will be here, though? One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is, just let me speak directly to my audience for a second. Bill is really the reason that I decided to try my hand at YouTube. I
would like to apologize to everybody out there who might be listening.
Yes, I think that there's some very, I really shouldn't be casting the blame around quite like that. But I really loved particularly your firewalls, where you'd stand there all cool. You'd be there and there'd be this little fire burning along the front, and you would just read off these beautifully written essays. And I thought, man, that's something. That's something nobody else is doing. So I
did about 300 of them, I want to say, honestly. And then the last one didn't even crack 10,000. So we used to have a 400,000 view floor for a while there before they started telling the American people what they should be seeing and not seeing.
Do you feel like YouTube has been just sort of squashing you?
Yeah, not just once. I mean, you can just watch it. I wish I had a graph. Even shows like Right Angle would start to build up to consistently like 20, 30,000 views per show. And then next day it's 7,000 views, 6,000. They keep taking a wrench to us and turning us down. Then we build the audience back up again. Then they crank us down again. Makes me wonder what they're so afraid of, frankly.
It really does. For those who don't know, Right Angle is a show that Bill does with his friend Scott Ott. And Stephen Green.
Correct.
And they are all in a line there. And I'm telling you, this is must view stuff because because you guys don't see completely eye to eye on everything.
No, it's what makes it fun. We all kind of come from slightly different backgrounds, we actually, we started out all in the blogosphere, Dave. We started back in 2000. For me, it was December of 2002. Steve was writing Vodka Pundit. I was writing Eject, 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 and Scott was writing Scrapple Face. And we were all kind of fans of each other's writing. And then when we all got hired at PJTV, we met at.
I just have to say, just the names of those blogs put all three of you in a
pretty much figure out who it is, right? Yeah, yeah. So we met in Washington, and we were all fans of each other, never met before, and we just decided to do a show. We did it at PJTV called Trifecta for several years, and then we just kind of moved it over when they closed up shop.
Well, it's great. It's great energy, and I'm a little frustrated sometimes because having viewed you enough times, you have one of these minds that when you get up on it, when you get up on the idea and everything starts firing, it's like, okay, just stand back and let the guy go.
Oh, well, thank you.
And sometimes you're a little constrained on that particular one.
Yeah, and I've been doing a show since January, maybe December, called Moving Back to America, which I do 2 of them a week, and they're not quite firewalls, but they're pretty close. I put a lot of graphics into them, and I edit them because I tend to go around and around and around a lot, and also I tend to go around and around and around a lot, and so I get to put 2 of those out a week, and I get to do whatever I want to on those, and I'm given the way they're sitting on the firewalls. Those things are a lot harder to produce, and since we're getting about the same number of views, I thought I might as well just try and get 2 out a week instead of 1 every 2 weeks.
Well, it's frustrating when you put a lot of energy into something, and I, as a writer myself of some sort, it's the rewrites that kill you. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but you start writing something and oh my God, it's getting away from me. It's 3,200 words. Oh my God, it's 4,000 words. And there's nuance there, but I have the weakness of I have to make 5 examples where 1 might work.
Well, me too. And it's been attributed. This quote's been attributed to a lot of people, but my favorite attribution is to Mark Twain, and the quote is, if I'd had more time, I would have written less. And and it's absolutely true. When I was doing the Cold War series for Daily Wire, I think those things were supposed to be 5,000 or 6,000 words, and I'd be looking at this thing was like 14,000, for 1 episode. And I just couldn't stop. And that's actually the smart way to write. You really should just get it out there, and then you can cut it down. The first draft of everything is just clearing the bush, just clearing the area and getting the building materials down, and you kind of build them on the second pass.
And you sort of figure out exactly what it is that you do think, because the thing about writing is it's unforgiving in a way. It holds, your thoughts will hold still. They're forced to hold still. So you go through and the old saying, you have to learn to kill your darlings.
That's right.
I mean, sometimes I write a paragraph that I'm so fond of that when I realize that it's not that powerful idea-wise.
It's not helping the story. Yeah, you don't need it. You wouldn't miss it if it were gone. When I first got out to LA, I was a limo driver, and I had a friend back from theater department at the University of Florida who became one of the executive producers on Cheers, and he asked me to write a couple spec scripts for them, so I did. And I went to I wrote 4 spec scripts for him. None of them were produced, but I sat with the writing staff for Cheers 4 times talking about these script ideas. And time and again, they would keep saying things like, Bill, I remember one quote I'll never forget. He said, "You really know your way around a joke. I mean, it's actually genuinely funny stuff, but it's not pushing the story. So we think you should cut it." And I remember thinking the discipline, that's why that show was so good. Any one of the jokes, not the ones that I wrote, but any one of these good jokes and Cheers would be the high point of any other sitcom. But they were brutal about it. And that's why that show was so exceptional. They just really, they just beat the laziness out of you, Dave. It's really that simple. You can write something easy, or you can have to go back and write something hard.
Well, this is the thing, and I've taken to, now that, since we're working with word processors, this is very, very easy.
Oh, my God.
I keep another page open, and I call that, whatever I'm working on will be the title, and then the other thing will be that title edit sheet. And so when I get a little stuck, I'll just take the paragraph. I'm just going to put it over on the edit sheet for a little while.
Good man.
And see if I can live without it. I can almost always live without it.
I think when I did, I just finished, they've been holding the series over at Daily Wire. I did a 3rd series for them called America's Forgotten Heroes. And I remember when I'd finished the first draft for John Paul Jones, it was something like 15,000 words, and it needed to get down to like 6. And I remember thinking that's every 3rd word. And came a point when I realized I can't cut this by 2/3. I'm just gonna go read it. I'm gonna cut and paste the stuff that I think is essential. This is the essential stuff. Move that over and then just string it together. But that's kind of a high-class problem if you're a writer, I've got such vast quantities of magnificent material. I just don't know we'll need a truck to haul away all these diamonds I'm forced to throw out,
Well, you have a bit of a skyrocket of of a brain, if you don't mind my saying so. You encompass a lot of different things.
Lots of noise, lots of flash, nothing accomplished. Yeah, pretty much a firework kind of a thing.
Maybe eject, eject, eject was what you were screaming to yourself in some of the writing sessions. But it's not necessarily a great gift if you can see everything from 4 or 5 different angles. And you are also cursed with historic perspective.
That's what actually, that's a really profound thing to say. That's what allows me to look at all of these things through 4 or 5 different angles and keep coming back to pretty much the same place. You know, I mean, I'm always pre-flighting the philosophy and making sure I'm not making assumptions, and I don't want to be wrong. I really, really don't want to be wrong. But the more history you read, the more consistent these kind of patterns and philosophies are in conservative thought. It just, if you're paying attention, it's not much of a challenge. We just finished a right angle show. I did one on what's happening in Israel, among many other things. And I said, you know, you had a lot of rockets when Barack Obama was president. Then you had no rockets when Donald Trump was president. You got rockets again now that Joe Biden's president. This is data. This is not speculation. It's not an opinion.
Learn from this?
No, exactly. And you have to be really an incredibly smart person to intentionally be able to miss as much data as the left does. And you really, even if you were throwing darts at a board or flipping coins, at least then they'd be right half the time. But in order to be as wrong as they are about this many things, it requires a great deal of mental gymnastics, you know, to not see things like that, to just simply see it and not believe it.
Yeah, is that cognitive dissonance thing.
That's it.
And to be comfortable with it. Yes, to know, oh, yes, I believe this fully. And this other completely contradictory thing, I believe that just as fully. That's a little bit frightening.
My favorite part about being a conservative is I get to say one thing and then do the same thing. You know, it's really, it's not just convenient. It's not even the cognitive dissonance so much, Dave. It's like, to me, the biggest issue is what kind of person in terms of character is willing to do that, is willing to have a philosophy that they know is opposed to the truth. What kind of person goes out there and says, I think taxes should be higher because I'm a millionaire and I'm a liberal and I think taxes should be higher and I'll be paying more taxes than anybody. And then turn to their accountant and say, take every deduction you possibly can and set up your own, you know, your own production company, which means that you're not making any income. The production company's making all the income. You pay yourself a couple $100,000 for spending money, you know. I see people like Matt Damon saying, I think we should raise taxes. And I'm thinking, and I make $12 million a year. No, you don't, Matt. You know, MD Productions makes $12 million a year. You have your company pays for your house, your car, your travel, all of that. You're virtue signaling, honestly. And we all know that, Dave. But the question is, how do you face yourself? You know, you have to have a certain lack of character, really, a fundamental disregard for honesty to say one thing and act and believe in another way.
And I heard you talking about wokeness the other day and how it just couldn't stand forever, but they're so reluctant to let go of the ideology, the theory. They're so reluctant to let go of it. And I often think being a conservative is not really an ideology.
It's not.
I liken it to, there's 2 museums sitting side by side, and one of them is the Museum of all avant-garde art and craziness and all, and the other one is sort of the Natural History Museum. You know, I see us as more like curators.
Exactly.
We're just here to take care of all those things that work.
Exactly right. And they're like painters, and they sit there and they struggle with, what am I going to paint? And we're like photographers. It's like, there's the mountain. Ka-chick. You know, it's like, I can't improve on it. It's it. And I don't have to interpret it.
Yes, exactly. It looks like the thing because it's the thing.
Yes, exactly. And when you run into this kind of intellectual, and I just consider intellectualism to be intelligence that's been left in the back of the fridge for 6 months, you know, when you run into this kind of intellectualism, you'll run into people who who maybe they're working on a theory, they're working on a map, and they're down in their officer's cabin, and they're drawing their map and charting their course, and put all their compasses there and all these calculations and so on, and they're convinced that they should be at the mouth of this river delta. Then they go up to the deck and they look out, and instead of a river delta, they see these cliffs, and they compare this to the map. They compare the map to the coastline, and they're convinced the coastline is wrong. That's the kind of people we're dealing with. They really believe it. If there's a discrepancy between a computer model and something in the atmosphere, then there's something, the atmosphere is wrong. And this is how you get yourself into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. And, it's amazing to me that everything, well, at this point, being on the left is a cool kids club. I guess it always has.
Used to be. I think that's changing. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I think I think it's important to say that.
I do, let's circle back to that one, shall we?
Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But for a very long time, like when I was a kid, whatever my parents thought was real and was worthy, I had to rebel against. So I had to choose to do everything that was the opposite. And because they weren't frivolous people and they had a lot more life experience, I was choosing everything by necessity wrong. Mm-hmm. Everything I chose was wrong. And so if you all you want is to screw with conservatives and just keep coming up with things that bum them out, you're going to be wrong on every issue. and then you're going and you will always be pushing against human nature instead of working with human nature, human motivations. You're always
totally exactly correct. And this makes sense. When you're a young child, you're 4 or 5 years old, it's important to pack as much information as your head as possible before the tiger gets you. and so children absorb everything is true, which is why you can believe in things like the tooth fairy and, free healthcare, because when you're a child, there are no critical restrictions. I clearly remember, I was probably 4 years old or something. And I went into the living room and I hid underneath the cushion on the couch. So
brilliant strategy.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And my mom came into the room and she looked around and she called to my dad. She said, "Have you seen Billy?" And he comes in and said, "No, I haven't seen him. I have no idea where he is." And you're in there laughing. I'm giggling. It's like, it's really working. Yeah. So you'll believe anything when you're a kid, and that's appropriate. And then it's also kind of biologically appropriate when it comes time for you to leave the care of your parents. You have to kind of psychologically rip yourself apart from them by just suddenly hit this point when these hormones start pumping into you. And again, I don't know who it was. It might have been Mark Twain, but it's like when I was 17, I thought my dad was an idiot. When I met him again at 25, I couldn't believe how smart he got over the last 7 years. And
so you have to sort of symbolically kill off the
alpha. You have to get out of the nest.
To define yourself.
Right. Exactly. And when I look back on those days for me, when I was in college, I was always pro-military guy. I was a lot more liberal than I called myself a liberal. There's nothing like today's progressives. I was always pro-military, pro-American, pro-business, but I was a lot more liberal than I am now. And I look back on all the things I believed, and I cannot get over how passionately I believed in things that I knew nothing about. I just knew nothing about them, nothing. And I was absolutely certain I was right. And
same here.
It's just so human, and it's so predictable, and it's so eternal. And I remember when I was that age, older people would say, "You're going to change when you get older." And I remember thinking, "Not me, man. You may have sold out, but this generation, we're going to actually do it, because we're made out of different stuff than you." And now I'm saying the exact same thing to the next generation, and they're going, no, you're just old and tired. We're going to be doing things differently. And then they're going to tell their kids and their grandkids, and on it goes. But it's exactly what you said. You can reach a point when you realize, okay, that's human nature. That's how it is. It's just the way it is. To me, it just seems kind of sad that we decide we're going to educate kids in college at the time when they are least equipped to learn anything. They're past those early years of believing everything, and they haven't acquired any wisdom yet. And that's when we send them off to college.
Well, they're coming out of those years, the high school years, when the peer group is absolutely everything. And
Hmm.
that's where you went from being the ward of your parent. As you're symbolically killing them off,
Right.
you cleave to your peer group.
You
And
got a new
then
family. Yes,
and it's
exactly right.
amazing. You see teenagers walking down the streets and they're doing all this goofy stuff and they have a force field around them. They don't care if anyone's watching, doesn't mean anything to them. But you come out of that and you're pulled away from your peer group and you come into the world of ideas, and you are fed ideas that will not hold up. I mean, what a way to rip kids off.
That's the term, pal. I mean, what's been done to? I get so frustrated with the millennials, and I just really, really have to sit down and stop myself and say these kids didn't ask to be educated this way. They didn't ask to be raised this way. They didn't ask. It wasn't their decision to not keep score at baseball games, and you know, they're just the victim of utter child abuse. When you deprive a child of a chance to fail on the soccer field, or well, I'm not going to even say soccer field, makes me sick, on a baseball diamond, if you're given a chance to fail and you deal with the heartbreak of losing a little league baseball game, then that kind of equips you for bigger failures later on. But to deprive them of that is just plain child abuse. And this idea that we have to protect these kids from this emotional harm, there's a biological component to this part of your brain called the amygdala, which is it's a threat detector. Basically, the way it works is, the best example I heard of how the amygdala works is if you're walking down a path and you hear the snap of twigs behind you, next thing you know, there's a leopard on your back. If you survive that experience, it's your amygdala that says, next time I hear a twig snap, I don't have to go through this whole kind of,
Exactly.
It's like it conditions you for this. And so when you find people, you remember it was 10 years ago now, I guess, they locked down an entire school and called like the police because some kid had chewed a Pop-Tart into the general shape of a pistol,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking to myself, I know some guys who were on actual SEAL teams and they don't get hysterical over the sight of a Pop-Tart that's been chewed into the approximate shape of a pistol. And the reason they don't is because they have actual guys shooting at them. And that's where their emotional threat center is, right? That
Right.
somebody shooting at you in an enclosed space is something that should get your full attention and get you adrenalized. Less than that, no. But if you keep lowering people's shock threshold, you're not doing them any favors. It just means that they get more and more hysterical over smaller and smaller things.
Right. And they're not being evolved into the place where you go, okay, threat should always be linked to some sort of positive action. They
Right.
just do the threat thing and they curl up into a ball,
Exactly.
and then people come and bring them teddy bears and whatnot.
Uh-huh.
And so how are they going to deal with the real world? I'm always amazed that when I'm on a service call or whatever, I'm calling up the cable company or whatever, and I get a young person on the line, and they're not screwed up. I'm always, I've heard you say recently that you're feeling optimistic, and I think that I'd love to hear you talk more about that. But this is one of those moments when I feel optimistic. I'm going, look, as hard as people are trying to screw these kids up, some are making it through.
Yep.
So
The reason
why
I
are
feel
you feeling optimistic?
Well, I feel optimistic in the same way that, I was never a surfer. I was a body surfer. We grew up in Bermuda. So I did a lot of body surfing and some boogie boarding. And so if you're going to be in that situation, you got to be looking out to sea. And if you've ever been out in the ocean or done anything like that, you know that when you're on a wave or a set of waves, the next stuff is calm. And then when there's calm, the next thing that's coming is the waves, and these things come and go. 10 years ago, I could see all this stuff kind of heading our way. And I thought, man, we're in for some real trouble. And sure enough, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in serious trouble, and it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But if I look at what's coming, I don't see any way that this thing is going to be able to maintain itself. Dave, sometimes the only way to get people's attention is to give them what they're asking for, and as long as socialism remains this kind of, slogan, then you can believe it. But when, we had a great example just a week ago, right? You ask young people, or liberals for that matter, or children, or any other mentally impaired individual, and you ask them, are you in favor of like shutting down the oil pipelines? Yeah, we should shut down oil pipelines. I don't know why they should shut them down. They just know that they should, because you got to save the planet. Well, we had that pipeline got shut down by Russian hackers. And now all of a sudden people are saying $7 a gallon with a limit of 10 gallons. And what the hell? And this is what I mean by so much of the stuff that's built into our society. It's just so wonderful. It's invisible. It's infrastructure. It's below the surface. You can't see it. And you don't miss it until it's gone. And now we find ourselves in this world where all of this nonsense is happening at an accelerating rate. And I just tickled to death by it. Makes me giggle every time I hear it. Soap dispensers are racist because they don't see black skin under them the way they white. Well, they're acoustic. They're based on audio signals. They're or they're infrared. That bounces off their heads. But when you almost have to give America,
they're thinking that they're reading light and they can't see a black hand.
That's what they're saying. Yeah,
that
they're yeah.
That doesn't make it all.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. And so probably what happened is that somebody went in there and put their hands under this thing, and it didn't dispense the soap or the dryer or whatever, which is what happens to everybody. Everybody has done that thing where it's like, come on,
it works once in a while.
Happens to everybody. But the problem is when your entire philosophy, not even philosophy, when your identity is about being a victim. If you're a black person and you can't get this thing to work, what other explanation could there be other than racism? The fact that the 10 white people before you and after you are having problems with this thing is just never enters some people's heads.
And these ideas, even when they're bad ideas, I mean, like if you were raising a child, or if you were letting one of your children go stay with their godmother or whatever for a while, and you heard later that person had made them feel helpless and made them feel that secretly other people were outside their field of vision, turning the screws to cause them to fail for the rest of their lives, you would call that child abuse.
You would.
Even if it were true, why would you tell a child that they are being sabotaged for life? The way that undercuts a kid's confidence, it's a type of violence.
And furthermore, if that situation you described had happened, why would you send your kid back there again? Which is what they do on a daily basis. Well, you take away their forget self-esteem, because I can't stand that word, but those two words, but take that out of it. If you saw something that was being destructive to your children and you keep doing it again and again and again, there's something wrong with you. And what's wrong with them is that half of the country is completely and utterly neurotic. Now, that term has been actually taken out of common usage because it's too accurate to survive in today's world. But basically, neuroses is the idea that you're responsible for everything, that everything's your fault. And it's closely coupled to narcissism, which is the show I shot this morning. It's called The Other Pandemic. And this idea that the universe revolves around you is actually a sign of people with strangely enough, with very weak sense of identity and character. You would think that a narcissist or somebody like that would have enormous strength of character, but in the case of these neurotics, it's almost like they have to see the reflection of everything back at them just to know that they're there. Most conservatives I know don't need that feedback to be comfortable in their own skin. They don't need constant affirmation. They don't need award shows. They don't need applause. They don't need the ribbons. They don't need they don't need it. They know who they are. They're comfortable with themselves. They have a few people they respect, and those people's opinion matter to them. But half of the country is just so completely neurotic about.
And for a conservative, the map is relatively simple.
Yeah.
We know what the values are. Sometimes we don't want to live up to them, but we know why we should. And then when we don't and things go wrong, we can identify one of 5 or 6 things that we didn't do right, which are part of the map. But on the other side, they keep shifting the values constantly. They keep pulling everything out. And plus, there's this problem with political correctness and cancel culture, where if you should question anything, you will be attacked. So what then is the impetus to think things through all the way? Because you start to see a contradiction coming up, and you turn back. You're thinking, there's nothing good out there. I'm going to be cut. I'm going to be taken off all the party lists, the invitation lists. My friends
You're going to be killed. Your identity will be erased.
Yeah,
you won't have friends anymore. You won't be a good liberal anymore. You won't have parties or business connections anymore. It's a kind of death.
Let's not think about it anymore. So they just back away. So they never really smack their face up against the result of this cognitive dissonance they're living with. They turn back before they do, and just agreed to, okay, we'll agree that men are technically women and women are technically men, even though we've been talking for a very long time about men are suppressing women. Also, we're going to say that men are women if they feel like they're women, and it gets confused. I'm confused already. Just talking about the confusion.
That's good. That's the goal. If you're confused, then you'll go along with anything, right? If there are no rules, look, the people that are destroying the rules are the people who cannot win with a set of rules, right? It's really pretty simple when you think about it. The only people who want to destroy the rules and the boundaries and the referees are the people who cannot compete on the field. And so since they can't compete on the field, they know it, they have to essentially eliminate the rules. And furthermore, that since they don't have much problem with ethical issues, at least as we understand ethics, they not only are not willing, they're not only willing to not play by the rules, they also see conservatives. It's not even a willingness; it's an imperative to play by the rules. They see that as an advantage that they have. They look on us as suckers for not taking advantage of these things. They know that they're making all this stuff up, and they know that we don't, and they see that as an advantage.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.